Kia ora, good morning. Welcome to this LTP workshop. We are precipitating that, if you like, by a review of our strategic risks. The purpose of this risk workshop is to review our strategic risks in the context of the current operating environment and using this as a basis for the LTP. Joined today by Julie Tweedy from Mobius Consulting. Those of you who are members of the Risk and Assurance Committee will know that we have been working with Julie to review our risk maturity and also to undertake this risk scan. Before we kick off today, I'd just like to open with a kind of kia. So, wero nā raru, raru ki uta, raru ki tai, ki whakakore, e oranga mō tātou mō muri. So, welcome and welcome to you. So, more detail. So basically the purpose of today is just to share the ELT's view on the kind of strategic risk refresh, and probably more importantly is actually to get your input and kind of insights into that process, because these will be the risks that will come back to you from a reporting perspective. So it's really good to understand what's important to this group as well. So what we're going to do is basically have a very quick introduction. We'll do a bit of a risk scan in terms of kind of the global New Zealand and what other councils what we're seeing through some of the other councils. We'll look at sharing the draft strategic risk statements, and kind of the emphasis there is very much on the draft. Go through a bit of a process in terms of capturing your insights, kind of 3 questions posed there, and then just a very quick wrap up at the end. So we just kind of start just with getting us all on the same page in terms of, you know, what risk is. So if we just look at the ISO definition, it comes back to, so risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So this is the things that would stop you from achieving what you want to strategically, so your LTP or strategic framework, those sorts of things. Importantly, it's in the future. So it's something that could happen. So issues, that's separate process. Those are things that are current issues. So those are dealt with separately. Risk also has a cause. So it's an event, something happening or something not happening, and has a consequence, which can be negative and positive. So that's really important to think about today, is those positive opportunities as well. It's also quite important to remember that, you know, identifying risk is an art, not a science. So if you kind of go back and look at, so like in 2018, the Marsh New Zealand Directors Risk Survey, it was talking about kind of IT disruption and natural catastrophe. It missed the big risks that happened in the couple of years that followed in terms of things like pandemic, supply chain disruption. So I think it's just important today to do our best, but know that these things do change and there is a need to kind of adapt and respond as we go. Super high level. So we'll start with, in terms of the risk scan. So one of those kind of classic reports that risk people often go to is the World Economic Forum, World Economic Forum for Global Risks. It's a report that comes out every year that's kind of doing that global scan of what risks people think are important. So kind of up there, hopefully you can read that in terms of, you know, in the short term, the things over the next couple of years, so that kind of geo-economic confrontation, misinformation and disinformation. So that's particularly important in the context in which you're operating, things that are happening around society, weather events, state-based conflict, some of those things we've seen before, some of those things are a lot newer this year. It's also kind of got the 10-year view there as well. which is kind of taking that slightly longer term perspective. Go to the next one. The other one we'll also like to look at is what the Institute of Internal Auditors are talking about, because that's where you kind of looking risk and assurance. So as governors, you'd be wanting to see some assurance over some of your key risks. So their latest report is the things that, are keeping them awake at night. There's some of those more classical things like the cybersecurity, but also starting to see more things around like digital disruption, business resilience, human capital. The geopolitical uncertainty has been one of the bigger jumpers from what we saw last year in terms of what they were forecasting, and digital disruption around AI. That's probably something you're all kind of getting more familiar with. It's something that's very kind of hot topic on a lot of this reporting. I'll skip over this one very quickly in terms of what directors in New Zealand and Australia are saying, but it's more along the same themes in terms of that resilience, AI, kind of domestic economic conditions. So, from a kind of high level, those are the things globally and kind of locally. If we kind of just very quickly have a look at what other councils have got on their risk registers. So these were the ones that were either publicly available or shared with us. It is only 6. But it does kind of give you a view again that there are some common things around workforce capability and capacity, legal reform, and the future of local government. There's some ones there that are also not mentioned, but it doesn't mean for those councils that they're not important. Probably what it means is that they're actually dealing with them more as an operational level than a strategic risk that comes up to governance. And then we kind of get on to the draft strategic risks. So these are the ones that have been prepared with the input from the executive team.
I've got some stuff to do up here. But anyway, these are just box there. One moment, please, caller.
So I'll just start going through them, but if there's any ELT members who want to kind of jump in and contribute.
Sorry, that's me. I'll put it back up.
So I'll keep talking anyway. So if we start with people.
It's a strategic risk in itself.
The people on the register on the draft list is actually around people and capability. So what we're kind of looking at here is a risk around about environment, Southland being able to attract, retain, and develop people. Because if you are unable to do that, then delivery of those strategic priorities will slow down. You may miss some of your statutory obligations, and that kind of performance culture becomes harder to embed. So that's kind of the all-encompassing one around people and capability. If we look at the second one is around social license. So this is the whole social license to operate. This is around those kind of So if the expectations around regional council shifts and the organisation isn't trusted by people, so that could be people, data or decisions, then your mandate potentially narrows, work becomes harder to do. So that social licence, it's number 2 on the list for a reason. It's very important. Sector reform and simplifying local government. So this is obviously quite a significant one. There's a lot happening all at once. So this risk is really kind of described in a way that the pace and breadth of reform outstrips Environment Southland's capacity to plan, resource and respond. And there's a lot of things that flow on from that. So is there anything that anyone wanted to kind of cover all
Yeah,
this.
just looking at these draft strategic risks, have you ranked them in order of importance 1 to 3, or have you just listed the 3?
We've got 10, so we've
Oh,
got,
right.
yeah, so
But
got
I was just going to say that,
Yeah.
in my view, the one we've got 2 is the most important one.
Yeah.
When you've got a government saying that a bunch of mayors can do what we do in a board in their spare time, and we're being painted as some kind of possum in the headlights that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah.
That has changed significantly the social license of what we're doing.
And that, so what we did is they are roughly in the kind of priority order, but I'll talk about it a bit more later. But after this process, once we kind of have agreed on what your top strategic risks are, there's still more of a process that we go through in terms of actually doing a detailed kind of risk assessment in terms of likelihood of consequence. So the relative order of these may change a bit, but that's, you know, really good to understand that it's very important for you. Yeah.
If I can add, just in regards to social license, I was reading through there. It's looking outside, it's not looking in how we interact with people. It's where the trust is lost.
Yeah.
It's how people are treated.
Yeah.
And I'm talking around compliance, I'm talking about that. That's one of the biggest things, is actually the interaction, how we do business.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all looking out, not looking within there internally. That's one of the biggest causes of mistrust.
And these aren't
Respect
exhaustive
and things.
lists
Aye.
either. These aren't exhaustive lists. So to Julie's point, you know, there's a high level snapshot. There is work to do to real, you know, particularly when we come back to the reporting, to really interrogate in a detailed way what the possible causes are, and also the controls of the risk crystallisers as well. So for those of you on the Risk and Assurance Committee who've seen our current, not this risk register, will know that we use a methodology. We've used a methodology historically called the bow tie to work out, you know, what are the factors that may lead to this risk and what can we do to mitigate the impact of those before they crystallise. So really trying to put in some preventative controls there, and then if the risk does crystallise, what can we do to mitigate its impacts. Yep. So is there anything else on the first 3?
Can I ask, did the executive put this together before or after the Head Start announcement?
After.
Yeah, just in my view, though, if we get some of the 10 right, when we get some of the 10 right, the social license conversation is partly solved. Because if we're getting some of that other, depending on what the next 7 are, of course. So I guess from my perspective, I would caution against trying to tackle some of the broader social license issues first, because actually we need to make sure that we've got that underlying stuff right. And that will mitigate some of the social license issues that we have. If we say we're going to do a thing, then we do a thing.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I would caution against getting that flow upside down, because concentrating on the wrong thing will cause more social license issues than solve them.
And agreed. And there's definitely, you'll see as we kind of go through the remainder of them, there are interdependencies between them, and that's something that is part of the work that we'll do after this. We'll make sure we've got top of mind. So, but yeah, all these insights are really good to flag to make sure that what's important to you is informing that next piece of work. So, yeah. David?
Yeah, I think like Eric, I don't see that these are. Oh. I don't see they're in the order is where, you know, you say, do you agree with them? I want to set the presentation first. I want to digest it. I have a bit of a look through these. And I think, like Jeremy was saying, some of the stuff around social license is the way we interact, and we can do a whole lot better. And I guess on seeing the first slide, I'm not going to say that's the way it is until I set the whole thing.
Yeah. So as we go through it, right at the end, I've got them all on one slide. So I think we'll use that as the opportunity to just kind of discuss actually what's missing and relative priorities and things. So.
Right.
Or should we move on to the next page then?
I was going to offer one observation, is that social license is currently being amplified as a challenge by virtue of number 3, sector reforms by local government. Government is the one who's contributed significantly to attacking the social license of local government, which then has a cascade to number 1 as well. So I just observed that suddenly, by virtue of recent announcements, it has significantly ramped up. It's not necessarily about what we do. In fact, arguably, we have to do 10 times better than what we've been doing, even just to hold ground, given the attacks on local government by central government.
Okay, so we go on to the next few. So we've got climate hazards and resilience here. So this is basically the hazards outpacing environment, Southland's ability to adapt and respond, and all the impacts it'll have on property and people. Specifically focusing the next one on strategic programs and capital delivery, making sure if there's a slip of them being on time or budget or the community expectations, you've got those impacts in terms of reputational damage. And then the third one on that page is around the geopolitical and supply chain volatility. So this is kind of the big global picture supply chain stuff and the impact that could potentially have here in terms of the work that's done. I'll just pause on that if there's any key things that are standing out from those few.
Well, Canal in particular, right, we're spending a whole lot of money. If we get it wrong, then it's absolutely going to be the reason why people say that we shouldn't be here. So, you know, and we're borrowing money as well. So it's not like it's a budget. It's bigger than a budget. And the people on the ground will judge us whether we do well or not.
See an opportunity in number 4. An opportunity is a social opportunity to convene meaningful conversations around adaptation in the future.
No, I see number 6 is something we can't do much about. Yay!
Yeah, true. It's true, but it has to be thought about in the context of delivery.
Oh, of course. I'm not saying we shouldn't do something about it, but
I
we
know,
can't do something about it.
Lyndall, but it has to be, you know, today, I suppose today was it brings quite a risk around non-delivery.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point here, is that while you can't control what's happening globally, you can control how you respond to it. So that's the risk management piece.
But the flow-on effect of that is the need to build in resilience and buffers to our systems, and that usually comes at a cost. So that means, sorry team, but you're either getting less for your overall dollar investment, or we're asking for more money to build resilience into the system.
Okay. Right, let's move on to the next 2. So we've got financial stability and funding model. So this is, I think, is probably on every risk register I saw from the other councils. So it's just that kind of cost pressures, funding constraints, outpacing willingness or ability to pay, and then the trade-offs that come as a result of that. Information data, AI and digital capability. So this is kind of the information data. If that lags, then that has the potential to result in sort of those like suboptimal decisions, work being delivered slower or less efficiently. Just pause on this one as well. Any discussion?
We heard from a advocacy stakeholder this morning that number 8's already at play for us with our website. Being difficult to negotiate for capable technology users. Still can't find information.
Yeah, and also the local government reform space means they're over-investing might be unwise or wise, who knows, because there will be potentially 4 different information data systems that need to cohabitate somehow. So we have to be mindful of how we invest.
And how you articulate your decisions
Yeah.
in relation to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually think that some of these are more a subset of some bigger ones. Right, the Manoa one's much bigger than the information. You've got information that you mightn't have the Rolls Royce information, but the project still goes on. So that's got to be going ahead, even if there is some problems around cost of fuel or whatever. The bigger project goes, but the other things are a subset that affect it. Because they affect everything.
Wants to? Yes, sir.
Can I just ask about weaponised information?
So we talked about
how we imagine that's likely to play out for ES, for example, to help people get together in that.
Yeah. This is people making requests for enormous amounts of data through Lagoima or privacy, using AI and bots to generate those requests. Like that can easily swamp an organisation in terms of responding. There have been cases in Europe where this happened. The OAG ran a webinar last year that had some international speakers, and it is playing out.
Can I just say about the rates capping thing and the expectation of the community to do stuff? There's so much pressure from the government and from the community to keep rates low. And yet there's the expectation that we have to do all these things, so that they just don't fit together.
Yep.
And how you get around that, there's so much information out there. There's a classic case of in the Hawke's Bay where the council was going to repair a bridge and they were going to cost 10 million, and the farmer said, "Oh no, I can do that for $2.5 million." And people, this sort of reinforces, and that may be true, but it reinforces the belief that councils don't work very efficiently. And so the government says, look, you've got all this stuff to do. You can do it at a much cheaper rate than you're doing at the moment. And there's so much of a challenge there. It's almost, I can't see how you can solve it. It's so pessimistic.
You're right. We're used to it. Just something.
Needing more every day.
It's a supportive Jim. I think, Morris, we've seen that, haven't we? Where there was the job that was done below the Gore Bridge and then down to Matera last year.
was quoted at somewhere about 2 million. We got it done for 800,000. So, you know, we can do it. And that's what we're being forced to investigate.
But then if we go for that might have been right, but if we go for a cheaper job, and it's not done properly, then we get into trouble for doing that. You know, and that's probably a worse outcome.
Strong contract should fix that, though, Morris.
But I guess also the point around rates would be that if you include the district, you're looking for 21% rates increase. Is that really what the community want? Because my gut feel is they want us to prioritise and keep it, because the affordability thing is the thing. Absolutely. 21%, you've got a very high threshold to actually justify that in the current environment. So.
The reality is, if we're taking a position on that, are we going to be strong enough for people that we think say, sorry, that's all you would let us sign up for? So that's the reality, and that's we have to be strong in our messaging to the community if we want to hold these low rates, and this is the outcome.
Well, clarity and transparency about what you would get for it. Absolutely.
I think the reality is it's not that simple, because, you know, particularly with these health and safety implications of the work that you're doing. Yeah, I mean, that's all playing out
Technically as well.
The reality, use that word again, is that we've effectively had rates capping politically. You put rates up, you get kicked off the council over the last 30, 40, 50 years, or however long it's been here. That's what I keep on telling the impact. So generally, if you put the rates up, it wouldn't last long. So, and it's cost us, because we haven't actually been investing in the community over what we needed to do. It would have been a hell of a lot cheaper to do some of this stuff 20, 30 years ago and be working away at it. And now all of a sudden, sort of crunch time, the reality's hit home, and then the government comes along and goes, no, you're not allowed to spend money. But it's not us that's spending money. We're not taxing the community very much to do what we do. So the government still takes a fair chunk of the tax take. That's the way it is.
Okay, last couple of risks. So we've got health, safety and wellbeing. So this is the kind of normal general health and safety stuff against the Act, with the risk of somebody being harmed and that potentially compromising delivery in the future. And then the last one is that kind of cyber and information security. So this is around a cyber event disrupting your systems, might be systems might not be available or information might be exposed. Or if there's any insights or anything you want to share or question.
So does there need to be more of a focus on responsibility coming back to regional councils from central government if this is a pathway they want us on? We can't be exposed legally and have our hands tied behind our back to actually act on resolving any issues. So once again, very conflicting messages out of central government, and maybe we just put some questions back to them around how we resolve this.
You describing a situation where we pass risk upwards through the hierarchy, saying this is our risk, but now it's your risk. We're naming it and passing it to you to give guidance on how you want it resolved. Yeah. And if you give us no guidance, no resources, still your risk, visible to the public that this is your risk that you've chosen not to act upon, don't hold us to account if it goes horribly wrong. Is that what you?
Yeah, I think we're in a situation where ministers hold certain powers, and that will come with responsibility. I think when we give a direction, then it comes back to the original source of direction, I would have thought.
But I suppose in that context, regulatory standards and compensation for, so thinking about that, and thinking about our canoe, work program around canoe, so that flood risk, is there associated legal risk to the council if some of that infrastructure fails prior to or during construction? Just we are, and that comes back to changing the frameworks around who's liable and who pays, and then where the risk lies.
I mean, these are all live matters that are playing out right now.
Nothing else on those two. So I think what we do now is we'll just kind of put all 10 of them up, and just having these 3 questions in mind is just that check-in that are these the strategic risks? We're looking at the right level. Should anything be kind of elevated as more important, or moved into more of an operational risk management space? Because that's the thing, just because if it's not on here doesn't mean that nothing's going to be done. It might just be put into another process within that the ELT are responsible for. Second question is just having that check. What are we avoiding, or what are we taking for granted? So are there things that are potentially a bit uncomfortable, or are there things that we're just assuming are there, that we actually take for granted that are actually really important strategic risks that should be on this register? And then that third point is around what do you want to see reported on? So I think in the future when these come back to you, it'll be quite a good discussion on what are the risks, but also what are the mitigations, like what are the activities that are happening in council to mitigate the impact of those risks. So we'll kind of think about that as the future when you get to hear all the positive things and the opportunities as well. But so, if we just kind of look at those 10 and then just kind of think about those things, if it's strategic, is there anything that we're taking for granted? Is there anything that's missing? And those things that you want to see regularly come to council for discussion.
I've got a couple of thoughts that I'd offer. As one is, it's really helpful to identify risks and to name them in these particular categories. What's really interesting is when you overlay them and stack them, a little bit like when you line up different slices of Swiss cheese in certain locations, you can see a hole all the way through, which leaves you really vulnerable. So I guess I'm really interested in if there's been analysis or thing around when you consider these stacked risks, what is the overall picture it speaks to? And I think for me, as I reflect on having been exposed to these, 2 really emerge for me zooming right out. One is there's a transition risk. We know transition's coming. Let's name that transition risk. And the risk is to really important functions that we currently deliver on. Are they lost, diminished, degraded in the transition to new arrangements? To me, that seems like one that probably may reflect a stacked or maybe an integrated perspective on all of these things, because any one of these things, if it emerged in spades, could challenge our ability to transition with our TA counterparts to a system of local government that supports the communities of Southland. That would be one. The second one, I think, is around democratic legitimacy for our region. And to me, that is the overarching thing that our current central government has lost sight of, is how to sustain democratic legitimacy. and what other things that we can do, take into account all of this, that might at least preserve, if not promote, democratic legitimacy for our Southland communities. Couple of
And maybe just to build on that, the actual cost of what we actually do. And the restructure, whatever this looks like, do people understand that our flood banks aren't perfect, that we aren't quite funding, that we haven't quite got the funding to make them perfect, that we don't, water quality isn't a tick box and carry on, that we obviously don't have levers through farm plans by the looks to work with these, so there are going to be some big levers going forward, whatever that correction looks like. So I'm not too sure if everyone's going to be through the reform, the actual cost of what regional councils have and how, to Jeremy's point, underfunding has happened, and there will be a catch-up period at some point. Where does that come from?
Thinking about the social license, and it's sort of also connected to as well. I'm thinking of 3 different organisations that we interact with, or have in the past. There's a regional forum, there's the catchment liaison groups, and then just started today, the Murihiku Advocacy Forum. And our social licence there, I mean, there's so much promise, I think, with this advocacy forum. We had a group of people around here today who hadn't been to this council before. We talked to them about the issues that we're facing with the government, with new legislation and everything. And then they talked about some of the things that they found frustrating. And one of the ones was building wetlands. We have to get a dam resource consent if we want to build anything that's decent size, and that puts them off. And then there's the catchment liaison groups that we work with. We work with them a lot over time, but there's still a significant proportion of people there, not so much the chairs, but the people that come to the meetings that don't trust us at all. They think that what we do is rubbish, and they think we do it wrong. There's a real difficulty there. So that's something I think if we could model the catchment liaison committees on this Murihiku Advocacy Forum, and then also we did talk about the regional forum in that group too, about what we really haven't done what we should have done with that. And I think that makes the people involved in that and others who know about it sort of think, well, what are you doing there? You're not really doing what we think you should be doing. So there's a whole range of things there. The people have beliefs that are, well, dare I say it, not right. They don't believe. They believe things that are not right. And there's the other groups that we're working through. It's really there's so much opportunity there in that social license, but there are also a lot of difficulties as well.
Eric.
Yeah, I just want to back up what Morris is saying. And last week we had a tour of the Waikiwi River, and it just confirmed in me the social license. I thought people would have been wowed with what we were doing. When we stopped at the old Beanmore Bridge, we came under a cab. And there are 2 significant things that people who hold dogmatic views have. One is they tend to confuse fact with their own opinion. And the second thing is when you're talking to them, they're not listening because they're thinking about the next thing they're going to argue with. And the government has clearly listened to people who don't believe we have a social licence. And I spoke to a cabinet minister about a year ago, and I said, we know what you're against, but what we need to know now is what you're for. And you haven't expressed that. And that's fair comment, which I said quite aggressively to him. And so I think either we're not articulating the things that are important that gives us social licence, so we need to look at ourselves and say, where are we falling down on getting that across? But I go back to saying, I think this is number one. We can't do anything unless we've got a social license, and that social license permeates into those who are at the layer above us, telling us what we should be doing, and they don't understand us.
Okay, I've got David in Lindell.
Okay, well, looking at those up there, I'm just writing the quote down for half the Lindell, but on this, so that's good. Actions speak greater than words. So on number 5, if we neglect actually on how we do Kanoa and the whole thing falls down, then forget about anything you're going to tell them how great or how they got it wrong, because they're going to judge you on the outcome. And so that's number 1, I guess. That follows on to social license. So it goes around some of the things around the way we niggle with communities over consents and at times some of these costs that are put out when people have done nothing wrong seem way out of kilter, and those niggles are always out there. So maybe we're going to look at what we're trying to achieve there, so we seem to accentuate the negative on things that weren't a problem but become a problem for people when they get the invoices on that stuff. The consenting thing, I've heard it for gravel workshops that even people like Doc look at it and go, when there's a little tweak to a consent, why do we have to go back and start again? If all the other parties agree that Mother Nature's changed something, then we just carry on. So that also affects their social license. Information is really important. I still think we haven't got enough transparency, particularly over Kanoa, where things are going, so that we can guide that forward. We've got a lot of information, but a lot of it is very broad. And at times we need a bit more specifics on that. And at times the other thing that we do is we have far too much stuff that isn't relative. So give you an example, the other day when we had a finance agenda, it's 400 pages. I scrambled through it late at night to realise that most of it wasn't applicable, and there was a bit that was there that actually needed to be a bit more. But the whole local government thing could have been appended, and that was a big chunk of it. So, you know, making it easier for us and for others. Feedback from today I've had from some people is there needed to be more two-way, and they had niggles they never got out on the table, things that they think are a problem. So when you have a forum like that, it's got to be two-way. And that document we had at the start was very, very thick. And you know, it's a good reference document, but it'd be great to hear what their views are on where they're going and what we should do better. It's a bit of a starting point. So, and the people capability, having the people in the right places to take stuff forward, because I know in some areas we're stretched. Kanoa, for instance, on the ground, we asked Ketchman to actually do that as well, and we're still looking for people. So, you know, some of those other things like cyber and information security are always a problem. Health, safety and well-being are a given. We shouldn't have people in a dangerous setting that got overhyped at one stage. There was too much fog. It's now critical risks. That's all part of everyday business. Some of those others are more important, and we all live under sector reform. So if we deliver our capital projects well, people get good information and direction on the way that's happening, helps their social license. The other bit's going to happen, but it'll also help maybe where it lands, as Hayley said, if you've got a consenting section that's really fit, slimmed down, and when you look at consent, you just pick it up and put it on something else, then surely that's a good outcome. then there's going, well, it's all going to be changed. I don't know what, but if we get our house rule, then you can pick it up and put it in something else. That seems to me be a really good thing to do. So,
Lyndall?
I'm not going to say many things I'd like to say about rules at this point.
Burden yourself.
Apart from saying, you know, if you break the road rules, you get a speeding ticket, or you don't get a ticket. Anywho, what I was going to say is about the financial sustainability section. I wonder if it's prudent to mention in particular our asset management, and I don't mean our floodways. I mean our investment, our reserves, our port ownership as being somewhat at risk in the light of the local government reform in particular, but in the short term, and that also includes actually the science data that we hold and the expertise that we hold and the people assets that we hold. I wonder if it's prudent to specifically have them mentioned somewhere and protected if that's how we think we should be doing it.
Mr. Roy, Boris, David, you've hit the nail on the head. It was only yesterday that we were having a little meeting with the Mayor of Waikiwi on the bridge just before Waikiwi. And the thing came through from one of the Progress League people. Sorry?
Does Waikiwi have a league?
You do.
Oh, I see.
Dicko is the name.
Righto.
These are the words that came through. I'm sick of this. For 18 years, I've heard this and nothing's happened. I'm happy to do what I need to get done and face the consequences because you people won't listen. And it's all about us telling our story, isn't it? Because we should have been out there, and we've said on a number of occasions, we should be out there holding these little meetings, getting our story across, that this is what we can do, this is what we can't do, but how do we make it work for you? And we're not doing it. I'm sorry, but that's where it is. That's where we lose our social license.
Oh, thank you. All I can hear here is about lack of trust, lack of one group not doing what the other group expects or wants. And I raised it at the last regulatory service committee, as well as other places where the expectations of ratepayers is different to the expectations of local government. And the expectation of local government is different to the expectation of the councillors. As an example, you know, we've got councillors that think that we as a council can do better, but then the council will play within the rules, and the councillors are advocating for ratepayer. And then we have central governments whose expectations is totally different to what we have, and all in line with what lobby groups want. So we've got everything coming from all different directions, and then we have a local government shift currently where we've had TAs using or weaponising their thoughts about other RAs and likes to somehow make them look better. And at the heart of all of this, we're all trying to make Southland a better place. But at every corner, none of them seem to be doing it or achieving it. So central government's undermining local government by going to lobby groups of ratepayers and saying one thing. TAs are undermining RAs. For what reason? To make themselves individually look wonderful. And ratepayers are the ones funding it. Probably there's some very good people out there that have the knowledge, but then there's some that don't, and they just make a statement, or they don't understand local government and therefore our region. The central government are slowly taking over. So, yeah, my thoughts are the risks. Southland's going to lose out of all of those. Southland's losing now. I know that's a big broad statement, but there's a few nodding heads. Let's hope we don't lose, but possibly will.
Thank you. Phil?
I'm just going to quickly observe that in the current climate, with all of this happening and those risks and the reforms and everything, I think there's an organisational risk that we go to a mentality of circle the wagons. And I think if we were to circle the wagons, which would seem like the natural and sensible thing to do, that actually might not serve the interests of Southland and our functions in the long term, and that a more confident openness kind of posture might be appropriate. I mean, as we transition to a new system, our functions that are currently performed will remain. I just don't think that I think we want to be aware of and sensitive to the risk of defaulting to that circle the wagons mode of thinking. That I think will just give the Indians more excuse to circle more tightly and fire arrows and attack us the way that central government and others have been attacking us. Because when you go into that defensive mode, it just seems really ripe for attack. So I would resist defaulting to that circle the wagons mode. If that phrase makes sense to people.
Yep. Thank you. Jeffrey.
Oh, thank you. Just going back to Councillor Roy and then Councillor Gibson there, you made some great points, but look, I wasn't on the bus trip to the Arete, but I suspect that we were losing a bit of social licence in that instance there is landowners and farmers alongside rivers with gravel management or river management. And there's really no such thing as river management. The only ability we have is to put tie willows in and throw a bit of rock into places that are eroded. So there's actually no gravel management at all. And I suspect that people get a bit grumpy when they see flood banks being raised up a bit and heaps of gravel building up in places on the rivers. So that's one area that I hear constantly from the rural side, and these two gentlemen have both reiterated that. So it's social licence. One of those portions in the rural areas comes down to gravel management, and I think we need to be able to, hopefully under this new OMA, get into rivers and either remove some or redistribute it around so that there is cleaner pathways for higher river flows there.
Okay, thank you. So we've had to talk about the risks and some of the factors underpinning them. Just coming back to the three questions and thinking about the risks, are there any here that you think are not strategic or ones that you wouldn't want reported back through the Risk Insurance Committee?
I think the AI and cyber security are going to take away a lot of time. It's a huge risk. It's going to take away a lot of effort and time from the team to get on and do. It's going to take away a lot of time and effort with the local government changes to get on and do what we need to do. I mean, it's going to become such a big thing. It is now currently, you know, with TikTok floating around and stuff like that, AI generated.
Okay. Lyndall?
No, I don't think there's anything I'd take out because it's really relevant. But how it's reported for each section might be different, right? There'll be different scales, different methods of reporting and different depth of reporting required for the individual categories, perhaps.
That'll be part of the process of the work that take away from today is looking at how that reporting will work practically.
Yeah, so I don't think I'd take anything away, and I'm trying really hard not to anything else.
If that is the question though, are there other kind of burning platforms or things that are really important that you would want to see? I mean, we don't want to kind of explode this into a list of 20 or 30, but is there one or two others that aren't kind of subtly covered in these other points? That's kind of the blind spots looking for.
Yeah.
I get, maybe the question originally is where does our ability to collaborate with our neighbouring councils sit in this? Because I see that as being quite decisive to a successful outcome for Southland in the future. I'm not sure where it may be captured up there. Is it people and capability risk? Is it a sector reform risk, social licence risk? But our ability to talk and collaborate and align on things like climate change and a bunch of other things.
If we can take it away and look sort of things.
Yeah, I actually think that some of them are I guess when I'm doing, running your farm or doing what you do, you prioritise things. So I have a list I work through and I get through them, but I do them in order of priority and things that make the biggest bang for your buck. So I'd hate to think put the same weighting on all 10. I'm not saying that they're not, but I'm saying that maybe 1, 2, 5, 7, 8 on the information, the top ones, and the rest of them are a bit subservient.
And that'll be part of that risk assessment process where we kind of look at that detailed likelihood and consequence and then what mitigations are in place now. And that's kind of part of the broader conversation is there anything more that's needed? And so that's where your scaling for your priority comes into play as well. So yeah, very aware of the need to do that. Yes.
Thank you, Amy. I think one of the things that we might take for granted here a bit is that we constantly need to be focusing on working well together as a council so that we respect each other's views, we respect the staff and their expertise, and I guess also that we do respect, with maybe limitations, the views of the community, but we've always got to be focused on good information. But the first thing I said is that working well together here is really important, and you can see in some other councils where they don't work together well, then all of these things, they become not achievable because the council's not functioning well. So I think that's really important.
I suppose I could say it, and it might be right off the wall, but in here, there's a number of things that we can only react to. In here also, there's a number of things that we can be part of forming. So I think they need to be split because it's a different response. And I take that the cyber information and security we can only react to it. If we go back up, I was going to say health and safety, Amy, but I thought you might not enjoy that. Only hearing you on. With geopolitical, we can only respond to it. Strategic project of capital delivery, we got that. Climate hazards and resilience, we can only respond to. The others we can have input and shape.
Hey, any more for any more?
Just one, it's not necessarily within these things, it's one of my fears is the risk of leadership within a community that will be making decisions based on not misinformation or lack of information. It'll be personal in their feelings of how things should be. Not based on that's and people will listen to that rather than actually getting information themselves. That's probably where we need to find. We're obviously going to play and try to fill that information gap. We understand how important it's obviously looking around and simplifying government. But that's probably one of those biggest fears, because we could make decisions that set in place for the next 30 years and we can live with them. And there will be personalities that will come into this. And that's a bit of a scary thing. I see it now, though, this region, other regions where it's political. So I don't know where it probably fits into that regime. I just want to reinforce, I'm happy to have the social license there. It's the first time we've seen social license as a risk. We always point out to the farmers and the group saying, well, you're going to lose your social license. Do this. And I always got quite angry about that. Certain CEs may have said that. But they pointed back at us. You're going to lose your trust in the social license too. Right. And that comes down to how to work with people. Again, it might be lack of information in regards to what we're doing, but it's, yeah, so I'm just pleased that that's up there. Because we're going to base our business on values as they're basing their business, their community on values. So we've got to really keep that alignment, I suppose.
Okay, last chance, everybody. Any last requests? No pixie caramels involved?
I've got some half-formed thoughts which would be foolish to spit out, so
Maybe can I
I'll
just,
wait till they're fully filled up.
Okay.
just on that issue of social license,
Yeah.
some of our functions are more dependent than others. When you have a monopolised regulatory function, it doesn't actually matter if you've got social license or not. But there's a cascade effect to the other things where you want to pursue non-regulatory mechanisms to improve fresh water quality. That strongly depends on social license, and the two are connected. So I just observe that it's not equal across all of our functions. If you've lost social license, then double down on regulation.
Yeah.
CME becomes your bread and butter. It doesn't matter if you've got social license. Just enforce the rules and back to basics, as government keeps telling us. Maybe that is the thing to do. In the 18 or 24 months we've got left, just go hard on regulation. There's nothing to lose if you're going out of existence anyway, so that could be one approach you think about.
Okay.
And if the water quality, that so much of our social license is also being challenged on. People are really frustrated with nitrate levels, etc.
So your social license is connected to health and safety when you've lost that social license. We're implementing rules that have been there, and it's new. Everything's new. But how we've done that and how we've worked with the community in regards to that all of a sudden we've got health and safety issues, or we get a bit of aggression, or then we've got these other issues all of a sudden that if we, that it does affect other parts of this risk.
And look, we're not the only council that's, you link those two things, we're not the only council that's experiencing that link and those rise in those health and safety incidents as a result of what's going on. Yep. Okay, let's wrap it up. Next steps, we're going to take this away.
Thank you for all your insights and input today. It's been really valuable, definitely helped shape where this goes. It's kind of said before, there's a wee bit more work to do in terms of fleshing this out, but it will come back, I believe, to this group to have the fuller conversation that includes those mitigations and things. So
Marcus has got his hand up at the back.
Yeah, just before we break up, I was going to say that we're going to rearrange the tables during lunch. We can come back to position after lunch. We can conclude upon this and table join up. So we Southland. Look at the ways that we're in front of the desks. Take a little piece.
Yep.
Just before we break.
Cool. And just before we do that, if you want to hold in prep for this afternoon's conversation, if you just want to hold these risks in the back of your head, Marcus, I can make some paper copies available just so when you're thinking about what's next and we're shaping up our LTP, you've got some high-level thoughts about those things that might impact our ability to achieve our LTP, and think about that in the context of the environment in which we are looking at achieving our mahi in the next few years. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for your